Welcome back to SpeakNest English Podcast Zone, your trusted guide for learning real, useful English with global confidence. Today's episode is something that many learners find difficult, giving your opinion in English. How do you say what you think, without sounding too aggressive or too shy? Whether you're a student, a job seeker, or a curious human, your opinions matter. Let's learn how to express them clearly and respectfully.
Okay, so, have you ever been in that situation? Maybe, a lively online chat or a really important work meeting. Or maybe even just like trying to connect with someone new and you've got this opinion, right? It's clear in your head.
Yeah, you know exactly what you think.
But the English words just don't seem to line up, don't match that feeling inside.
Oh, absolutely. It's that really frustrating moment, isn't it? Wanting to chip in, say something meaningful.
That feeling kind of stuck, like you don't want to sound too aggressive maybe.
Or the opposite, right? Too shy, like your point doesn't even get heard.
Exactly. That feeling of being, well, linguistically caught in the middle.
It's something so many English learners grapple with. And often the key isn't just what words you know.
It's more than vocabulary.
Yeah, it's how you frame it, how you present your perspective with like the right level of confidence or, certainty.
Okay. So like dialing it up or down depending on the situation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think about it. A suggestion probably needs softer phrasing, doesn't it?
Right. Gentler.
Whereas a really strong belief, a conviction, well, you might express that more directly. But, and this is crucial, always respectfully.
Okay. Yeah, respect is key. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. How to give your opinions effectively, confidently, in English.
We've gone through some really insightful material, actually, stuff that breaks down this exact challenge.
And offers some incredibly practical strategies, which I think is what people really need.
Definitely. Our goal here really is to help equip you, give you a kind of toolkit for navigating these conversations more smoothly.
A toolkit, I like that. An opinion toolbox.
Exactly. And what's fascinating looking at the sources we explored is that it really goes beyond just learning lists of words.
Okay. How so?
Well, they really highlight how much cultural nuances matter. And understanding the sort of implied meaning behind certain phrases, that plays a huge role.
So it's subtle sometimes. It's choosing your words and your delivery.
Yes. Choosing them in a way that hopefully resonates with whoever you're talking to.
Yeah.
And reflects how strongly you believe something.
Without causing unnecessary friction or, stepping on toes.
Precisely. Finding that balance.
Absolutely. Because really, at its core, expressing your opinion is just about making your voice heard, isn't it?
Fundamentally, yes.
And the material we looked at, it really underscores this point. Sharing your perspective, it actually shows confidence.
It does. And it helps other people understand you, understand your viewpoint, which is just invaluable in, well, so many situations.
So valuable. If we kind of zoom out for a second, think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Consider how sharing your thoughts really enriches different parts of your life, like in a classroom.
Oh, definitely. In class, your input can spark whole new ways of thinking. For everyone, not just you.
And what about at work? Professional settings.
Crucial there. Your insights could be absolutely pivotal in, say, decision-making, pushing a project forward.
True. And even just, casual chats, social conversations.
Yeah, even then. Voicing your opinions helps build, deeper connections. It shows who you really are, your authentic self.
It breaks down barriers, maybe.
I think so. And it's not just face-to-face anymore, is it? That's something else our sources touched on.
You mean online?
Exactly. The importance of being able to articulate your opinions constructively online.
Yeah.
Whether you're responding to a blog post or
joining a forum discussion or even just commenting on social media.
Right. That ability to express yourself clearly, respectfully, it's just essential for communicating effectively in the world today. It really is.
Okay, so our aim then for this deep dive is to give you that opinion toolbox we mentioned.
Yeah, it's the plan. We'll be pulling out key phrases, strategies, approaches from the sources we read.
Things to help you express your thoughts with, hopefully, both clarity and confidence.
We want to move beyond just sort of identifying the challenge.
And actually give you concrete ways to tackle it. Practical takeaways.
Exactly. Things you can start using right away.
Okay. So maybe just to wrap up this first part, here's something to think about. How might becoming more confident, actually expressing your opinions more freely in English, how might that genuinely reshape your interactions?
Good question, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, think about both. Maybe take a second, reflect on a time you really wanted to share what you thought.
But hesitated.
held back.
Yeah, you hesitated.
Yeah.
And now maybe think about how the ideas, the concepts we're about to explore.
How they might help you approach that kind of situation differently next time.
Exactly. How could things change? It's something worth mulling over as we get into the details. Today, we're tackling something really practical. How to confidently share your opinions in English.
Absolutely. It's one of those skills that comes up everywhere, whether you're in a meeting, maybe just chatting, or even trying to navigate different views online. Being clear is key.
Right. And that's our focus today. We want to unpack some really useful, common English phrases. Stuff for saying what you think, agreeing with people, and crucially, disagreeing politely.
Yeah, that last one can be tricky. We've pulled together some great material on these phrases, so the idea is to give you some solid tools, things you can actually use to speak your mind with a bit more confidence.
Okay, great. So let's get right to it. Where do you even begin when you want to, put your thoughts out there?
Well, I think the logical starting point is probably with the fundamental phrases, the ones that clearly signal, okay, here's my personal take.
Right, the absolute basics. So our sources highlight I think and I believe. These feel like the real cornerstones, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. I think is often like your first offer, maybe when you're exploring an idea. You might say something like, I think this new plan could work.
Yeah, that feels a little lighter, maybe, like you're just putting it out there. And I believe, does that carry a bit more weight, like you've thought about it more?
Exactly. It often suggests a bit more conviction, maybe based on experience or values. Someone might say, I believe clear communication is vital. It feels a touch stronger than just, I think.
Interesting how that small word change makes a difference. So I think is maybe the opening thought. I believe has a bit more behind it. What about, in my opinion? That sounds pretty direct.
It is, yeah. In my opinion, that's very clear.
Yeah.
No ambiguity there. You're really flagging it as your specific viewpoint. You might hear, in my opinion, this is the best way forward.
Straight to the point. Okay. And then there's, as far as I know, this one feels different. Like you're sharing what you think, but maybe admitting you don't have all the facts.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. As far as I know, is super useful when your opinion is based on, well, what you currently know.
Yeah.
It adds a little bit of maybe humility.
Right.
It acknowledges things might change. Like, as far as I know, the deadline is Friday, but hey, maybe it got moved.
Okay, so those are like the entry-level phrases for sharing your view.
Yeah.
But what if you feel really strongly, like you're not just thinking it, you know it?
Yeah. Then we shift gears. This is where we get into phrases that have more, more emphasis.
Okay.
The materials point to things like, I strongly feel that, and I'm convinced that. These definitely turn up the volume.
I strongly feel that. Yeah, that sounds like you really considered it. It's not just a whim.
Exactly. It shows a real personal commitment to the idea. I strongly feel that we need to invest in training.
Right. And I'm convinced that.
Oh.
That almost sounds like you have proof, or at least strong reasons.
Precisely, yeah. I'm convinced that the data shows X, Y, Z. It suggests you've looked at evidence. It's not just a gut feeling. It implies a more objective basis, perhaps.
And what about, I truly believe? That one sounds almost deeper, more personal.
Yes. Often it taps into core values or principles, like, I truly believe everyone deserves a second chance. It's about fundamental conviction. These stronger phrases are great when you need to be assertive or show real commitment.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got ways to share our own thoughts, from tentative to really quite certain. But conversation is a two-way street, right? What about agreeing?
Right, agreeing. It seems simple, but you can do it in ways that build connection. Obviously, I agree with you, works perfectly fine. It's direct.
Yeah, straightforward. Can't go wrong there. But is there a way to, agree better? Show you've actually listened?
Absolutely. Even when you agree, adding a little something extra helps. Instead of just, I agree, I agree with you. That's a really good point about the budget. See, it shows you didn't just hear the words, you got the reasoning.
Ah, I see. It makes it feel more engaged, less like just ticking a box. Okay, now for the tricky part. Disagreeing. How do you do that without, starting an argument?
Yeah, this is crucial for keeping things constructive. The material has some excellent tools. One I really like is, that's a good point, but...
Yeah, I like that one too. It validates them first, right, before you introduce your idea. That little word but does a lot of work there.
It really does. It's like a gentle pivot. You acknowledge their view, then offer yours. So if someone says we should launch next month, you could say, that's a good point about momentum, but I think we need more testing first.
Nice. What else? I see it differently. How does that one fit in? It feels quite direct.
It is direct, but it's still polite because it focuses on your perspective, not on attacking theirs. It's like saying, my viewpoint isn't the same, and then you can explain why.
Okay. And then there's, I respect your view, but I think. That one seems to really focus on, well, respect.
Exactly. It's strength. It explicitly validates the person, even if you don't agree with their idea. I respect your view. That's key. But I think it separates the opinion from the individual holding it. Really good for maintaining relationships.
Okay, so let's sort of recap. We started with the basics like, I think, I believe. Then moved to stronger stuff like, I strongly feel, I'm convinced. We covered simple agreement with, I agree with you, maybe adding a bit more. And for disagreeing politely, we have tools like, that's a good point, but I see it differently. And that respectful one, I respect your view, but I think.
That's a great summary. And the key thing, really, is that choosing the right phrase depends so much on the situation, who you're talking to, how direct you want to be, you know.
Right. So for you listening, the real takeaway here isn't just learning phrases off a list. It's about having these tools ready so you can jump into conversations, discussions in English, and feel more confident and, well, effective.
Absolutely. Knowing how to phrase things, especially agreement and disagreement, it just makes interactions smoother. It's a really valuable skill, professionally and personally.
So here's something to maybe think about. Try actually using some of these phrases this week. Notice how they feel, how people react, and maybe listen more closely to how others express their opinions too. You might pick up some subtle things just by observing.
Ever find yourself, wanting to chime in during a conversation in English, to really share your view, but maybe you feel a bit hesitant? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today, how to confidently express your opinions in English.
That's right. And we've got some really interesting material focusing on the practical side of things. It's about moving past just knowing the words, isn't it? And actually using them effectively when you want to share what you're thinking.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to give you some genuinely useful insights and concrete examples too.
Yeah, tools you can actually use.
Exactly. We want you to leave feeling more ready, to articulate your thoughts in English, whatever the setting might be.
Good goal.
Let's start with something really relatable. Picture this. You're at, say, your favorite coffee place, just chatting with friends.
Okay, yeah, casual setting.
And naturally, the conversation might turn to something simple, like preferences. Maybe someone asks about your usual drink.
Right, happens all the time.
Okay, so let's look at this. It seems simple, right? You might just casually say, I think cold coffee tastes better than hot coffee.
Yep.
Now that's just personal taste, isn't it? On the surface.
It is, but it's also like a fundamental way we express a subjective viewpoint. Notice the phrasing there. I think, I think. It's super common and generally quite polite. It's a way to introduce something that's just your feeling or your belief.
So it flags it as subjective.
Exactly. It signals, this isn't a universal fact. It's just me. And that little phrase, well, it softens the statement, doesn't it? It kind of invites discussion rather than just stating something rigidly.
That makes a lot of sense. It's less like you're laying down the law and more like you're adding your perspective to the mix.
Precisely. An offering, as you said.
Okay, so let's shift gears. Imagine a slightly different context, maybe a class debate.
Okay, a bit more formal.
Yeah, and perhaps the topic is, the impact of global communication. And you contribute, in my opinion, learning English opens more career doors. That feels, it feels a bit more substantial.
It does, doesn't it? While it's still your personal take, the phrase, in my opinion, often suggests a more considered viewpoint.
Right, like you've actually thought about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It implies you've probably weighed some factors, maybe some evidence in your head, even if you're not listing it all out right then. It's a way to signal you're adding a reasoned belief to the discussion. So it fits well in a more formal chat where opinions might be, unpacked a bit more.
Got it. Okay, let's move into maybe a professional setting, like a job interview.
Ah, okay. High stakes.
Right, and maybe you're asked about teamwork, your philosophy on it, and you respond with, I believe teamwork is the key to success. That phrase, I believe, it seems to carry more weight, more conviction.
That's a really sharp observation. I believe often does signal a deeper level of conviction. It might be rooted in your own experiences or a fundamental understanding you hold.
So it's not just a casual thought.
Not usually, no. In a professional context, especially, using I believe can project confidence. Confidence in your principles, how you approach your work. It suggests this is something you genuinely hold to be true, you see.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, one more common scenario, engaging online.
Oh yeah, plenty of opinions there.
Definitely. So you're reading comments, maybe on an article about climate change or something, and you see a point you really resonate with. You might type, I agree with your point about climate change. It's urgent.
Expressing agreement.
Yeah, it's about showing solidarity, right? Adding your support to an idea that's already out there.
Precisely. And I agree with is such a direct, effective way to show you're aligned with someone else's view.
It feels quite connective.
It really does. What's interesting there is how it not only shares your stance, but also builds a little connection with the original commenter. You're reinforcing a shared viewpoint, maybe adding your own emphasis, like with it's urgent.
So when we look back at all these little examples, the coffee chat, the class, the interview, the online comment,
Yeah.
what really strikes me is just how normal it is, how woven into our daily lives expressing opinions actually is. It's not just for like big formal speeches.
That's such a crucial insight. It really is. These everyday moments, these, casual exchanges or quick online replies, they're actually really fertile ground for practice.
Practice for getting more confident in English.
Exactly. For developing that confidence and expressing yourself. It's all about recognizing these little opportunities as they pop up.
So it almost sounds like the advice is to actively look for those small openings, to just say, I think, or in my opinion, even if it feels minor.
That's a very practical way to put it, yes.
Yeah.
Think of it like exercising a muscle. The more you use these phrases, the more you articulate your thoughts, even on simple stuff, the more natural it'll feel. And the more confident you'll become when you need to share more complex ideas later on.
Right. It builds up over time.
It really does, little by little.
So maybe the takeaway for you listening is, as you go about your day from now on, just try to tune into those moments a bit more.
Be aware of them.
Yeah. A friend asks what you think of a movie. You see an interesting discussion online. Maybe just take that small step. Voice your opinion in English. It sounds like those consistent small actions are what can really, truly make a difference in growing your speaking abilities.
Absolutely. Don't underestimate the power of those small everyday interactions. They add up. Okay, so we're diving into something really practical today, looking at how we actually give our opinions.
Yeah.
You sent in a source, actually, a lesson about expressing opinions confidently, specifically in English.
Right. And what's really interesting here, even though it's framed as language learning, the core idea is about expressing yourself clearly, confidently. That's universal. Our goal isn't really the English specifics. It's more about pulling out those, underlying principles for you.
Exactly. Principles that work, whether you're learning a language or just, trying to get your point across better day to day. So this deep dive is about unpacking how this source tackles opinion giving, kind of a shortcut to thinking about our own communication.
And it starts very actively, doesn't it? It jumps straight into like a mini role play exercise.
Yeah, it does. And the first scenario is super simple. It just asks, what do you think about studying at night?
Right. Straightforward question.
And the example answer they give is, I think it's peaceful and quiet at night. I can focus better. It's very basic.
But that simplicity is key, isn't it? Let's break that down a little.
Okay.
You've got the direct question, invites a personal view. Then the answer starts with, I think. Super clear signal. This is my opinion. No beating around the bush.
Yeah, unambiguous.
Yeah.
And crucially, it doesn't just stop there, right? It gives reasons, simple ones, but reasons nonetheless. Peaceful and quiet can focus better.
Exactly. They're not like complex philosophical arguments.
No.
But they ground the opinion. They make it relatable. You immediately think, okay, yeah, I get why they might feel that way. Or maybe, I feel differently because it prompts that internal check.
Right. It highlights that, even a simple justification adds weight. It's not just a random statement. There's a because.
State your view, provide a brief why. That's a really fundamental building block for effective communication generally, I think. Makes things much clearer.
Okay, so then the lesson immediately turns it over to you, the listener. The next question is, do you prefer reading books or watching movies?
And it explicitly tells you to pause and actually say your opinion out loud.
Which is interesting, that active step.
It really is. Think about the value of that. It's not just passively absorbing, it's immediate application. It forces you, encourages you maybe to quickly formulate a thought and articulate it. That's a skill in itself.
Yeah, it's like a little mental nudge, isn't it? It takes the idea of having an opinion from something abstract in your head to, well, something you actually do, something you verbalize.
It's sort of like flexing a muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Even on a small scale. It kind of bypasses that hesitation we sometimes feel about speaking up.
And that's how confidence often builds, right? Incrementally. These little low-stakes exercises show that expressing yourself doesn't always need this perfectly crafted, detailed argument.
Sometimes it's just, I prefer X because Y. Simple.
Precisely. It starts with basic preferences, straightforward reasons.
So for you listening, especially if you appreciate getting to the core of things quickly, this source is a neat little example. It's not theory. It's like, here's a practical, bite-sized way to practice getting your thoughts out there clearly.
Yeah, and it's funny because, the context is language learning, but the principles state your view clearly. Add a simple reason that resonates way beyond learning English. It works in, well, pretty much any situation where you need to communicate effectively.
Right. So I guess the main takeaway, the distilled insight from this source, is really about the power of that simple structure. State what you think, and then give a clear, concise why.
Doesn't have to be complicated. I believe this because of that.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, that's often all you need to get started.
Yeah. Powerful in its simplicity.
Which brings up something interesting for you to maybe chew on after this. Think about a recent time you had to give your opinion. Could be anything, big or small. How did you actually approach it? Could this very simple structure opinion, then a brief reason, could that have been useful? Or maybe, thinking more broadly, what makes expressing your opinion feel easy for you sometimes, and what makes it feel challenging other times? Something to reflect on.
So today we're tackling a skill that's pretty fundamental in, well, almost any conversation, really.
Absolutely. Super important.
How to express your opinions effectively. In English, we've sifted through some great material focusing on clear, persuasive communication.
Yeah, how to get your point across well.
Exactly. And our mission here is, look, to give you useful phrases, yes, but also to really get why, giving solid reasons, why it just transforms your viewpoint, makes it more impactful.
That's spot on. It's moving beyond just, saying what you think. It's about showing why you think that way, how adding that support, that reasoning, makes people actually listen.
Okay, let's really dig into this then. Why isn't it always enough to just say, I think this? Why does adding a because or the reason is? Why does that actually matter so much?
Well, it's fascinating, really. It comes down to the power of demonstration. When you give a reason, you're essentially opening a window into how you think.
Letting people see behind the curtain.
Exactly. You're showing your opinion isn't just random. It's based on something. And that immediately makes it feel more credible, more convincing.
Right. Like showing your work in math. You mentioned that analogy before we started. It's not just the answer.
Precisely. It proves you didn't just guess.
Okay, so it turns a simple statement into more of an argument, even a friendly one. So our sources highlight some key phrases. Let's just start with the big one, the bedrock. Because.
Because is just so fundamental, isn't it? It's direct, simple. It just creates that immediate link. Opinion, justification, boom.
Yeah.
It clearly signals, okay, here comes the why. Like the example, I prefer watching movies because I enjoy visual stories. Simple, clear.
Right. That because gives the reason we can understand. It's not just, I like movies.
Exactly. You get the motivation behind it.
Okay, now there's also a slightly more, maybe formal option. The reason is. When did you pull that one out?
The reason is works very similarly, of course, but it can add a bit more emphasis, a touch more weight to the explanation coming up.
Like a little signpost saying, pay attention.
Sort of, yeah. Like, okay, here's the specific justification I want you to focus on. It can be good if you're highlighting one key point, or maybe if the reason is a bit more involved.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And the third one we looked at, that's why. How does that one work?
That's why. This one often signals a logical consequence, a result.
Cause and effect.
Pretty much. It suggests, based on this fact or observation, this is the logical outcome or action. Like, it's rained all week. That's why the garden is so muddy. The rain is the reason. The mud is the result. Linked by that's why.
Got it. Okay. And our guide had that really practical example too. I believe remote work is beneficial, especially for individuals who value flexibility. It points out that the phrase, especially for individuals who value flexibility, is the reason. What makes adding that specific bit so effective?
Well, what's really insightful there is the specificity it adds. Just saying remote work is beneficial is well, it's quite broad, isn't it?
Yeah, very general.
But adding, especially for individuals who value flexibility, does two things. It gives a reason the value of flexibility, and it highlights who benefits most.
Ah, okay. So it narrows it down.
Precisely. It makes the opinion much more targeted, more relatable perhaps. It just strengthens the whole point because it shows you've considered who and why.
Right, right. It feels much more grounded than just a vague positive feeling. You've thought about the specifics. It really does highlight that adding these reasons, it's not just filler. It's about clarity. It's about persuasive power.
Yeah, and this brings up something interesting for you listening, actually. Think about conversations you've had. Maybe an opinion was shared, yours or someone else's, and it just sort of fell flat.
Didn't quite land.
Exactly. Could be because the why was missing. What we're seeing here is that by consciously using these phrases, like because, and giving those reasons, you really boost the chance of your view being, well, understood and actually considered.
Okay, so let's try and bring it all together then. The main takeaway from our deep dive today seems pretty clear. When you share your opinions in English, try to make it a habit. Include a reason.
Yeah, it's the key. Makes your perspective clearer, more convincing, just lands better.
And keep those phrases handy in your mind. Because the reason is, that's why.
Definitely. Maybe start noticing how other people use them. And then, try weaving them into your own conversations.
Right. And just to leave you with something to mull over, think about how just adding a simple because could change things. Doesn't matter if it's about music taste or something much bigger. How might that simple act shift how people see your ideas? How thoughtful they seem?
Yeah, consider the doors that might open when you move from just stating what you think to actually explaining the reasons behind it. Makes a difference.
Today, we're tackling something pretty common, I think. How to actually say what you think in English, when you're feeling a bit uncertain.
Right. It's that tricky spot. You've got an idea, maybe just a gut feeling, but you don't want to sound like you're laying down the law, especially if, you're not totally convinced yourself. How do you handle that?
Exactly. It can feel a little exposed, maybe, sharing something when you're not 100% sure. So our mission in this deep dive is to check out some really smart ways to offer those opinions politely. Make sure they land well.
Yeah, and we're drawing on Section 6 of Episode 33, How to Give Opinions in English, Speak Your Mind with Confidence. It's got some great practical phrases for exactly this kind of situation.
Okay, cool. So let's dive right in then. The first one the source points out is, I'm not sure, but I think. Seems simple, but what's the real impact of starting with, I'm not sure? Why does that work so well?
Well, that little opening, I'm not sure, it actually does quite a bit. Psychologically, I mean. You're immediately telling the other person, hey, I'm not claiming to be the final word here.
Ah, okay.
And that tends to make people, relax a bit. They're less likely to feel like you're just trying to push some absolute truth onto them. It sort of opens things up, makes it more collaborative.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's like you're saying, look, I'm thinking this through, but this is where I am right now. And then the second part, but I think. How does that piece fit in?
So the but I think, that's where you gently sort of slide your actual opinion in. The but is key. It pivots from the uncertainty you just admitted to. Okay, despite that uncertainty, I do have something to add. It's a much less aggressive way to put your view forward.
I see that. Okay, so imagine you're talking about some new software maybe for the team. You haven't really used it much, but you've got some first impressions. How would that sound?
You could try something like, I'm not sure, but I think this new software might be, a bit tricky for some of the team members who aren't super techie based on that interface anyway. Mm-hmm. See, you're clear you're not positive, but you're still adding your observation.
Right, yeah. That definitely feels like it invites more discussion rather than just stating, this software is confusing. Okay, so the source gives us another useful one. Maybe it's just me, but. What's the idea of this phrase?
Maybe it's just me, but. That's a really nice one for opinions that feel, maybe a bit personal or subjective, things others might not see the same way. Starting like that flags it right away. This is my take.
So it sort of heads off disagreement or defensiveness?
Pretty much. By saying it's just me, you're showing humility, right? You're basically saying this is how it strikes me, but hey, I get that you might feel differently. Huh. It lowers the temperature, makes it safer to voice something that maybe goes against the grain, encourages a bit of empathy too.
Yeah, I can picture that. Like when you have a feeling about a movie everyone else loved or something. Can you give us another example? How might that play out?
Okay, say you're at a workshop or something. The speaker presents this big new idea. Everyone's nodding along, seems impressed. But you're thinking, something's not quite right.
Yeah, okay.
You could turn to the person next to you and say, quietly, maybe it's just me, but I felt like some of those assumptions were a little shaky. You're sharing your doubt, but not like you're attacking the speaker's whole presentation.
That's good. Yeah, very subtle, but effective way to disagree, kind of. Okay, what's the third tool the source gives us for these uncertain moments?
The last one we're looking at today is, it seems like. This one works a bit differently. It frames your opinion more like an observation, almost an interpretation of events, rather than a solid fact.
So not this is X, but more like, from what I can see, it looks like X. How does that help the conversation flow?
Exactly like that. When you say, it seems like, you're leaving room for others to say, yeah, I see that too. Or maybe, actually, I saw it more like this. It invites collaboration on figuring things out, rather than you just stating a conclusion.
Gotcha. Can you give us a quick practical example for it seems like?
Sure. Imagine your team's looking at customer comments about a new website feature. Instead of just saying, customers hate the new menu, which is pretty final,
Right.
Someone could say, okay, looking at these comments, it seems like quite a few people are finding the new menu a bit confusing, maybe where to find things. It points to the issue, but leaves space to discuss why it seems that way, or if there are other factors.
Okay, so these three phrases then. I'm not sure, but I think. Maybe it's just me, but and it seems like. Taken together. What's sort of the core benefit? Why are they so useful when we're not totally sure?
I think the common denominator here is humility and open-mindedness. That's what they all inject into what you're saying. And like the source material says, using language like this generally makes you sound more approachable, more receptive. People tend to appreciate that, right? It just creates a better vibe for sharing ideas, less confrontational.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You don't always have to have the killer argument or present your ideas as rock solid to make a real contribution. Sometimes just opening the door for more thought, more discussion, that's the valuable thing.
Exactly. It's about sharing your view while also showing it's your view, and that you're open to hearing others, maybe refining your own thinking.
So, wrapping this part up then, when you want to speak your mind in English, but you've got that little voice saying, maybe not totally sure here, remembering phrases like, I'm not sure, but I think. Maybe it's just me, but and it seems like they're really handy tools.
Definitely. They let you participate, be confident, but also show that humility, that openness.
Simple phrases, but they can make a big difference in how people hear you. Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener. Think about this. If you started consciously using these kinds of phrases, just these three, maybe how might that change the dynamic in your conversations? Especially those times when you want to add your 2 cents, but, you're acknowledging you don't have the final answer. It's all about finding that balance, isn't it? Speaking up while staying open.
We're tackling something pretty fundamental, actually.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Expressing your opinions confidently. In English, specifically.
Ah, okay. That's a big one for a lot of people.
It really is. And you might, find yourself holding back sometimes, thinking maybe my English isn't quite perfect yet.
Right. That feeling is so common. This internal pressure. Like you have to reach some impossible standard before you're even allowed to speak up.
Exactly. That little voice whispering, nope, not good enough, can't share this. But here's the core thing we found, really digging into this. It turns out speaking isn't really the result of feeling confident.
Okay.
It's actually the engine. It's what builds the confidence in the first place.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Because the very act of, articulating your thoughts, even if you stumble a bit, maybe make a small grammar mistake or, have an accent, it actually strengthens those connections in your brain.
Connections between thoughts and the English words.
Exactly. It's almost like a physical process.
Yeah.
You're literally building fluency and at the same time kind of reducing that anxiety around speaking out loud.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit more. There was this one perspective in an article we looked at that really stood out.
Yeah. What was that?
It compared learning to speak a new language to learning a physical skill, like juggling.
Juggling. Okay, I like that.
Right. You don't just pick up 3 balls and expect to be a master instantly.
Yeah. No, definitely not. You drop them everywhere.
You start with one, probably drop it, pick it up, try again. But with every attempt, your coordination gets, slightly better.
It's iterative.
Speaking is just like that. It's the same kind of process. Try, maybe mess up, learn, try again.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, I mean, think about how much we all miss out on when people hold back.
Yeah.
People with really valuable perspectives, just because they hesitate. You had a note, didn't you, about how diversity of thought leads to better solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Innovation often comes from different viewpoints colliding. Yeah.
So, staying silent, even if you feel your English isn't, perfect, it actually means potentially holding back a really crucial piece of that puzzle, a piece only you might have.
And here's where it gets really interesting, actually. One study we saw highlighted something crucial, listeners. They're often way more focused on the content, on what you're actually trying to say, than on minor grammatical slip-ups.
Right. Especially if your intention is clear, if they get the gist.
It's about the connection, the understanding, getting the idea across.
Which, raises a big question, doesn't it? Why do we often put so much pressure on ourselves for perfect grammar when, really, effective communication is the actual goal?
Good point. It's like we have this internal critic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that critic can be way harsher, way more demanding than the people we're actually talking to.
Yeah. I mean, think about times you've listened to someone, maybe not a native speaker, but you totally understood them, right? Despite a few mistakes.
Absolutely. You got the message, the communication worked.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, it means every single time you push yourself, just a little, to voice an opinion in English.
Yeah.
You're not just practicing verb tenses or something abstract. No. You are actively, physically rewiring your brain, making it more comfortable, more confident, using English in, the real world.
It becomes a positive cycle then. Speak more, get more confident, speak more.
Exactly. A virtuous cycle. And it's not just about your growth either.
Okay.
Another piece we looked at really emphasized this. Sharing your unique perspective, the one shaped by your specific background, your experiences, it genuinely enriches the whole conversation for everyone.
Right. Your viewpoint might unlock something, offer an angle or an idea that nobody else had even considered.
Precisely.
Think about it. Think about a time you learned something really valuable from someone whose first language wasn't English.
Yeah.
Their perspective, their experience, that was the gold, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
The minor language things probably didn't really take away from the impact of what they shared.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Which just reinforces the main takeaway here, doesn't it?
Which is?
Your voice. Regardless of your accent, regardless of your current fluency level, it has inherent value.
A value that comes from who you are, your unique experiences, how you see the world.
Yes, unequivocally.
So, okay. The next time you feel that hesitation, that little voice starting up, try to remember this deep dive. Remember that just speaking, the act itself, is an incredibly powerful tool for building up that confidence.
And remember that your perspective, it really does have something significant to offer.
Don't let chasing some idea of perfect English silence, a voice that really deserves to be heard.
It's a loss for you, and it's a loss for the rest of us, too.
So maybe think about this. What's just one small opinion, one thought, that you could try voicing in English today? Something you might have kept inside before.
Just one small step.
Exactly. Give it a try. Your voice matters.
That wraps up episode 33, How to Give Opinions in English. Now you know how to start your opinion clearly, add reasons, agree or disagree politely, sound confident and kind. In the next episode, we'll explore a fun one, English for travel memories, how to talk about trips and adventures. So until then, keep speaking, keep thinking, and never stop sharing your voice with the world, the SpeakNest way.